Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our meeting today. I just wanted to go over some different aspects of commercial insurance with you all to help you know what kind of things to look for your clients, how you can provide an additional service to them. Most buyers, when they're looking for a commercial property, insurance is going to be one of the factors that they're looking at in the expense report, so they can see how the profit, and numbers look on paper when they're analyzing a property. So this is a very important factor. Insurance can either be really competitive or really expensive, and it can have a big impact. So what I wanted to go over to start with was just a few different major components of what makes up a good policy for a landlord. This would be the case whether it's multifamily, retail, essentially any building that an investor or entity would purchase and own that they're renting out to a tenant. So the main components that are really important is building coverage. And that's something that I always assess according to replacement cost to make sure that they're properly covered. Typically, if people haven't reviewed their policies for a long time, those are things that need to be pretty seriously revised. The second thing is liability, which is premises liability. So if anyone were to slip and fall or be injured on the premises, this is especially important not just in cases of multifamily, but think with retail if someone's assigned to be doing maintenance for a parking lot, or for the shopping center in general. It happens fairly often that there's an accident, people slip and fall, people sue, particularly in California, but also nationwide. So premises liability is a very important component for that. If they also need, and say it's a very large exposure, like a large shopping center, we can also add umbrella policies, which extend the limit of liability even higher. The third thing that's very important to keep an eye out for is business income or loss of rents. This gets lost in a lot of policies that I see. People get more worried about just making sure that the building's insured, and they kind of forget about this portion. So that coverage would provide funds in the case, say, a building burns down and it takes 2 years to rebuild the building. So it would pay them rental income for those 2 years so that they're still able to remain profitable and rebuild the building at the same time. So this is just based off of annual rents, and that's how we always rate it. And the coverage is typically provided for 12 months at a time, actual loss, and can be up to 24 months or stated amounts of what they need depending on income. So these are three main components of really important things that every landlord really needs to have. And going on to, I know some people sometimes just need a quick estimate, or they wanting to kind of just give their customer a general idea of what costs would look like for a property. So it varies a lot, and it's based on a few different factors, among them the year a property was built, the zip code or area that it's in. We especially see this in California and on the East Coast, as some can be fire zone, brush, or tsunami zone. And then year built is also very important. Also, that's particularly in California too. It impacts everywhere, but also here because of retrofitting for earthquake. That's a big deal. I know a lot of times too, when you all are doing deals on properties like that, the seller will have to credit an amount based on retrofitting if it's not done properly. But also bear in mind that that's an additional insurance cost too. If it's not retrofitted, it tends to be more expensive. I guess, a lot of it's kind of according to logic, basically. If it's in a good area, it's newer, then insurance tends to be inexpensive. And if it's not, then it tends to be more. But because we do a lot of buildings and a lot of general liability insurance, and we see a lot of these properties, if you all can send us, basically we just need the entity name, the address, and then type of use, whether it's commercial tenants, retail, or multifamily, we can give you a pretty, fair estimate, within a day, just so you can get a basic cost. We can also provide a detailed quote if needed, and that shouldn't take more than a day or two. But if you just need, a quick estimate and you're on the phone with the client and, you need to give them a number, you all can feel free to call, and we'll be happy to give you a general idea of where to go with that. I think that's basically kind of an overview of what we would cover for building insurance. Are there any questions that you all have?
I think one of the things that would be helpful for the newer agents is, because normally the insurance thing, they don't think of it as something for us to be able to compare, but having you in-house and, you know, as one of our fellow peak entities, it would be good if they knew some good verbiage and some good ways to, like, you know, be able to bring you guys in, because, you know, a lot of times it's just, oh yeah, we need proof of, you know, casualty by closing, and it's just one of those things where they just like automatically put it on the client to just go to who they're already dealing with to get in, you know.
To get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's gonna be the most relevant for you, well, probably in the cases where you're representing a buyer who's buying a property, because then he's analyzing the insurance costs, you know, as part of the expense reports before purchasing the property. And so you have more of an opportunity there to provide that as an additional service to him, that you can say, hey, I'll, you know, be happy to check this for you. You know, and on your part, it's just really to send me that basic information, like the name, address, and use, and then I can get you a quote. So for your part, it's kind of a extra service that you can provide without too much trouble. On the seller side, it's a little more difficult, and
Yeah.
I understand obviously you guys are focused on selling the building, so you're not really concerned about what the insurance is going to be on it. And it's kind of that way with homes and with residential too. So I think mainly with buyers is going to be where
Right.
it's a good opportunity to.
And two things. One is, what is some info you can tell about earthquake insurance, and is there anything unique about cannabis, the new?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. So these are some additional coverages that are available but are important to remember. So flood and earthquake are not covered in regular property insurance. So if a buyer or any insured wants to have that coverage, then they need to purchase it separately. We can still quote all of that together, but they're separate policies. Just bear in mind that those things are very expensive. Typically, I don't recommend flood to people unless they are in an actual flood zone and they really do need the coverage. Earthquake is another consideration. Really, everyone in California needs it, but it's very costly. It typically is about the same price as the property insurance. So they're looking at double the cost as opposed to not. So a lot of people choose to go without, but it's important to offer them the option that they realize that it's not part of it. So, and as it relates to cannabis, actually have good news on that end. There's a lot of options for insurance for cannabis, whether it's insurance for leases, for tenants, or for buildings where they have that exposure. So if a landlord has a building and he's going to be having tenants that have cannabis exposures, it's not as big of a deal as it used to be, because there's a lot of companies that will provide general liability insurance for those tenants. We actually have quite a few markets that are kind of fighting to get into that end of the market as it's developing. So it's become, you know, something that's actually very easy and simple to do.
Okay. And we do we do nationwide business. Are you guys licensed in other states, or can you do business
We are.
in other states?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're currently licensed in California, Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Florida, New York, and Ohio. And as needed, if you have deals in other states, it's a very simple process for us to get licensed in another state. So.
Okay. And we do business opportunity sales. You guys also do that, where you actually insure the business itself, the operation?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
We have both. So typically in insurance terms, we would call the building policy lessor's risk. So that would protect the lessor of the building and his exposures and rental income. And the business policy itself would be what the tenant is required to have. So that's also a good practice when you're working with a buyer and investor. I mean, people that are, you know, seasoned typically know this, but for newer ones, it's really important for them to require their tenants to have liability insurance just to protect themselves. So that's even if it's not something that, you know, is referred to us or has nothing to do with it, it's just a good service that you're providing and that you're letting them know. To protect yourself correctly, you need to make, as part of the lease, all of your tenants carry liability insurance.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Are you doing the limo service yet?
Yes, working on it. Oh yeah, really?
Talk to this guy.
Okay, perfect. We have you too. Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
You guys have any other questions?
And what's your typical turnaround time for getting a quote?
For things that are you know, not in a substandard area from fire or flood or things like that, typically same day we can provide you with a quote. If it's a situation where it's a really old building and it's had losses and a lot of claims, it could take, I would say, up to 2 days to obtain a quote, just because it has to go through individual underwriting on the carrier side. But for most cases, you know, if you all send us something, we'll be able to get you a good estimate the same day. So we pride ourselves in trying to get things out fast, because we know that's important for you too. So,
If someone's come back in as well, I have State Farm or Farmers, you know, I've been covered, you know, what's the advantage that you guys have over a company like that?
we actually have a very big advantage. State Farm, Farmers, any company that's a direct writer, meaning that their agents write for only their company, they have an interest in representing the company, not necessarily for the client. What we do as an independent brokerage is that we have access to a wide variety of different carriers, and we shop all of those carriers to see what's best for the client. So where they represent the carrier, we really represent the client, and we'll look for the best price, not only on, you know, bringing them on board, but also every year before renewal, we reshop and revise the situation. So it's a very different type of service. And if, you know, we review someone's policy, we see that it's not better than what they have with one of those carriers, we'll tell them also. It's really, you know, just providing good advice and letting them know what's competitive or not. So,
Okay.
yeah. And, you know, in general, it's building insurance is fairly simple, but just, you know, for the agents to know, I think, you know, as I was saying, for buyers especially, it's just added service that it's very simple on the part, but most of that information is information you already have, the name, the address, and the basic use, and then, you know, we can help you with the rest. So, yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Can you guys, wait, hold on, can you just, oh, you can press stop.